Hey, welcome to lesson 4 of part 2 intermediate. We just went through the stropping process. We deburred our knife, we sharpened it, we polished out, and we basically finished it. Depends on how sharp you really want to go for a standard carry knife. There's only so sharp you can get before you're just showing off, essentially. For general purpose, the knife right now is plenty sharp to do basically anything you want to do with it. So for the sake of the discussion, we're going much further with this later. Most of you at this point are probably asking, yeah, the knife's great right now, but what happens when I need to resharpen it? Well, the good news is we don't have to do everything we just did to resharpen this knife. When it starts getting a little bit dull, that's not a problem. Provided you weren't cutting concrete or really chewing up the edge real badly on it, you have two things you can do to resharpen it. It's a lot easier to keep the knife sharp than it is to let it get really dull and have to start over and put a new facet. We already have a 25-degree facet on this, as we said. So let's just keep in mind 25 degrees. Those surfaces are at 25 degrees, right? So I don't have to start over with my coarse stone again. I can go to my, if I get it really dull, I can go to my 1200 or my 1000 ceramic stone, put it back in the jig, line it up again, go to 25 degrees, sharpen it back down. It'll look just like this. It's a lot easier to do a quick resharpen. So you can use your fine stone. That's one method. 2, you can also strop it again. As I said, if you keep your knife really sharp, it starts getting a little bit dull just to where it won't shave hair. Put it back in your strop. Give it another 15-20 pulls, 20 or 30, whatever it takes, and it'll probably sharpen right back up. If you keep this knife really sharp, it's very low maintenance to keep it sharp in the future. When you wait till it gets really dull or really damaged, you have to go in and repair your primary facet or just redo a whole new facet or take that facet down. So once every weekend or two, depending what you're doing with your knife, or if you're doing a lot of kitchen work, if this turns out to be your favorite butcher knife, maybe or maybe not, just get out your strop, polish it up a little bit. It's good to go for years and years. Polish it up. It's good to go for years and years. Not a problem. Third thing you can do is new facet. Again, this will get into advanced stuff later, but this is 25 degrees, correct? If it's in the jig, it's got a 25-degree facet. If you really chew that edge up, you can make the next edge on it right here. You can move that one only to 25 degrees, that microscopic little surface you can't really see right there. So if you chew this up at 25, you can just put it in the jig, go back to 30 or 28 or the next step up with your 2000 stone or your 1500 or your 1200 stone. Just put just enough surface on it to get all the imperfections out, and then you'll be back sharp again. This is a different knife, as you can see. Same model, different knife that I carry. Probably can't quite see there, but on that tiny little microscopic surface, about a 64th of an inch wide, this is a 25-degree knife also, but this is 30 degrees, that cutting edge right there. And this one's already getting hazy and dull, and it won't quite shave, so I need to strop it again pretty soon. But if you really bugger it up and it doesn't sharpen very well in your strop, put it back in the jig real quickly, go up 5 degrees, and put a new little surface, which goes to 30 degrees. So you have the benefit of being still 25 degrees here, the micro cutting surface 30 degrees, nice and sharp again. Put it back in the strop if you want. Some people don't even do the stropping. They just put it back in their jig, put it back at 25 degrees with a 1200 or 1000 stone, get a surface on both sides. Yeah, it feels plenty sharp. It'll start cutting hair. That's fine. If you want to go all the way like we just did with this one, make it really sharp all the way down to a mirror finish, you can do that. Most people, once you get used to having a really good quality sharp knife, you really like that a lot better than having to live with dull knives your entire life. So I can see why once people get their knife really super sharp, they want to keep it that way. It's a lot less energy to keep it sharp than it is to go from scratch in the last 20-something lessons to bring a really bad knife up to this, which is super sharp, you know, surgeon scalpel sharp, and basically will shave anything. But once it's here, strop it up, it's good to go. This is my old knife here. The other one I'm using, I can feel it really dragging on here. Again, I'm getting a lot of resistance because there's a really dull surface on there that I've got to buff out because I've been using it a lot, pulling labels, cutting boxes, whatever I'm doing with it. So sometimes I'll cut a piece of fruit or vegetable. I carry this one on my hip mostly in its little, you know, knife sheath. So See, I just did a few pulls on it. Now I can see that surface I couldn't see a minute ago. Right here, that little 64th of an inch is showing up again now because I basically buffed off all the haze from it. And even just those few pulls on the strop there, I can feel it starting to get an edge. So do the same thing again. Again, I have a Tonto edge. Most of you will probably have a regular curved knife, so you're just going to be pulling the whole curve across, the whole curve across, the whole curve across. Pretty simple stuff. But resharpening is pretty simple. You don't have to do the whole thing over again. Just do the original 25 degrees, or you could step it up if that gets dull too fast. Go to 30 degrees, put a new little edge, put it back on the strop. But first, at least try to strop it and see if it starts gaining the edge. If it doesn't get any sharper when you're stropping it, that's because the edge is too far compromised, and you have to put it back in the jig, put a new facet on it, which I'm probably gonna have to do with this one. It's not taking a new edge very well. I'll put it back in the jig here in a little bit. Go 30 degrees with my 1200 stone. Just put that little bit of an edge back on it, then put it back in the strop, and I'm done. I can do that in about 2 or 3 minutes. Again, once a knife is really sharp, it's a lot easier to keep it sharp. Some people will keep this in their kitchen, in their workroom, in their office, or whatever leather piece you're using for your stropping, or if you make your own, that's no problem. I actually have one of my stones and a couple of my kits. Took a piece of hippie leather, made a piece of wood, put it on the stone, so I can actually use the stone regular in the jig, but only over the edge of it to strop it that way. But we're doing general purpose this way. So yeah, this one does look a bit dull here. But that's it for repolishing lesson 4. Pretty simple. Resharpen. You don't have to do the whole knife over again. Just first try it on your leather. If it doesn't get sharp again after 20 or 30 pulls, then it's too far compromised. Put it back in the stone. You know, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 passes, knock that edge off of there, and you're good to go again. So that's it for this lesson.